Hello, everybody. Welcome to the morning show. We're coming to you this morning on Channel 9 on WJOP LP Newburyport, Joppa Radio at FM 96.3. We're also live streaming on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. Just click on the YouTube icon in the upper right-hand corner. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and I am just delighted to welcome this morning's guest. Reverend Dr. Jerred Mercer, rector of St. Paul's Episcopal Church, is here, and Reverend Bryan, minister of the First Religious Society Unitarian Universalist Church, is here. And we're going to talk about the Afghan refugee families that both ministers and both of their parishes have been welcoming into Newburyport. So the first question I'd like to ask each of you to talk about, Reverend Jerred, perhaps we'll start with you first. Reverend Jerred, welcome and thank you for visiting the morning show, first of all.
Thanks,
and Reverend Rebecca, welcome to you too as well. And thank you for visiting the morning show. I really appreciate your coming.
Hi, Mary. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. It's great to see you both again. So just how did you learn about the Afghan family's need to resettle in a community? And what made you decide to say yes? And Father Jerred, I'll start with you because I think you were the first in Newburyport.
Yeah, sure. So I had just seen back in late August and early September when the big wave of evacuations in Afghanistan was happening. I saw that a refugee resettlement agency, the International Institute of New England, put out just a notice about needs that were coming down as people were coming over, needs that were sort of coming down the road. And one of them was temporary housing, that there's so many coming at once, and particularly with the large families that we've received here in Newburyport, that finding permanent housing is going to take time, and they needed temporary space. And we had this sort of hallway of classroom and meeting space in the church that sort of can be separated off in private from the rest. And it seemed we weren't using them very much anyway because of COVID. And it just seemed the obvious thing that, well, we have this space. And so how can we not sort of offer it? It's sort of a no-brainer in some way. And so I reached out to IINE and just told them that we had the space and that, what described it to them. And they were like, oh, that's great. We'll let you know. I didn't hear anything for probably about 2 months. And then they talked to them again. They wanted to see the space. And then they said, it looks great. And then a couple of days later, they said the first family's arriving in 5 days. And so it was
not a lot of lead time.
Yeah, mad rush. And so we didn't even know if it was going to happen or anything. So we weren't able to prepare or plan before that. And it was, and I feel lucky actually to have gotten the sort of 5 days notice or 6 days or whatever it was, because sometimes it's like, there's a plane landing this evening,
oh gosh,
need to go pick them up sort of thing, like, that the agency will hear. And so that first family of 13 actually ended up getting redirected. They didn't come here. But then another week later, we received our first family of 9, December 13th. And then January 5th, a family of 10. And so the 2 families now at St. Paul's. And then so what made you say yes? Yeah, well, I mean, part of it is, like I said, is just obvious. Like, and I've said it before, I think it's a moral imperative of our time. I think from at the grassroots community level where we are up to our, politicians and all of this, that generations are going to look back and see how we responded or didn't, to this situation. And so I think there's a lot of goodwill around this whole situation because there are quote unquote allies, Operation Allies Welcome and all of this that the government's done, which is great. I mean, to me, that doesn't matter at all. I don't, if they were allies or not allies, if they were fighting against, America or whatever, it doesn't, like, our call to love and serve them isn't because they've somehow deserve that love, have earned it some way, but because they're humans and in need. And so it's just, it was the most obvious thing to do, I think.
Quite literally a humanitarian imperative, I guess, to sum up what you're saying. Reverend Rebecca, how about you?
So, well, I guess I can answer that question in two ways. One is that our congregation had voted a couple of years ago to become what's called a level 2 sanctuary congregation. And that was related to folks that were at risk of deportation, and that we would support a congregation locally who was providing sanctuary to those folks. So when Father Jerred and his parish said yes to this, I immediately reached out to him. We know each other from the Clergy Association, and of course, being clergy here in town together, and said, whatever you need, like, we're here. And it was fantastic to be a part of that initial setup. And I remember going over there the first time on a Saturday and all the donations that had come in and all of that. And so I just thought, this is wonderful. And then about 2 weeks later, he emailed me. We'd been emailing about other things, but then he said, so you said you would like be there and, do anything. How about taking a family? And the answer is, of course. Of course, I went to the board, to our board of directors for the congregation, and they voted unanimously yes. And everybody just responded with enthusiasm. And to us, it's an expression of our faith and an extension of that commitment to providing sanctuary. So it's a great honor and joy. Yeah.
So it was, I guess you could put it this way, a natural follow-up to the decision that you'd made previously that you would be a sanctuary.
Yes.
Community and church. And you mentioned something about the role of faith. One of the things that I wanted to ask each of you was to expand upon that a little bit, if you might, because both of you are leaders of faith-based communities here. And I'd be interested in hearing you talk a little bit more about how your own or your community's faith impacted your decision to welcome and extend care to these families. Whichever of you would like to start. Father Jerred, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah. As Reverend Rebecca so beautifully already pointed out, that this is a sort of natural, almost automatic, extension of our faith, and I think this extends to to all faiths, wrestling with what it means to be a human person in relation to God, in relation to other people, in relation to all creation. All the world. And so, we sort of most of the time stumble through life trying to figure out what that means, I think. And we have different routes of in different phases of that we sort of go down to make sense of this. Of course, as a Christian priest and in the Christian church at St. Paul's Episcopal, that following the way of Jesus is central to that, who was, of course, a refugee himself and who lived, his entire life on offer for those in need and any kind of need. And so that's our calling. Like, if we're not doing this, then we shouldn't exist. Like, there's no point. It's I think that this it's so natural, such an automatic even expression of what it means to live this life of faith, that to deny that or to neglect that, I think would be to really just deny the faith or sort of cease to actively be a participant in that. And it doesn't mean that everyone can do this same thing, right, or has the space to take a family, but in whatever ways we're able, right, and in whatever ways we're able, and everyone can't do the same thing, nor should everyone do the same thing. But it just, it's so natural. It's such a flow from who we are and what we do and why we're here.
You both make the point that it's an extension of your faith and an expression of your faith. Love thy neighbor. And we may muddle about with what is love, what is neighbor, but in this case, it seems as though love thy neighbor means shelter, welcome, they're humans. And that means they're our neighbors. And to the extent we have a faith, faith is love is faith. And so thank you for that. Reverend Rebecca, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, I mean, I echo everything, not surprisingly, that Father Jerred just said. We actually took, I hadn't said this, we took what's called our parish hall. We have two separate buildings. It's directly next to the to the church where the sanctuary is, and the offices are on the lower level. And we've converted, I should say the entire community has been a part of converting that into their temporary home. And so in Unitarian Universalism, there are a lot of similarities and some particularities. We are very much of a religious pluralism. There's a lot of religious diversity, theological diversity within our congregation. However, we have these principles that we adhere to and that we promise to work towards, never to achieve perfection, but to work towards. And one of those is the belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And so for us, again, this is a natural, to put our, what we say we believe into actions, to say, if that is true, what are we called to do? How are we called to live and to respond? So it is a direct extension of our faith, and strengthens both our own personal spirituality and the faith of the congregation as a whole, I believe. And that's what I'm seeing also.
Well, building upon those ideas about the natural extension of faith by your communities, I wanted to ask you about how your communities have responded to welcoming, taking care of the families that you have invited in to become part of your communities. How have the members of your parishes and or the wider community of Greater Newburyport responded to the endeavor to welcome these families in, to shelter them, to take care of them? Was it what you expected? And has there been anything that surprised you about the response? Whoever would like to be. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go first. I can feel part of me is like, ooh.
Go for it.
It has been phenomenal. It has just been amazing. I mean, depending on what sort of lens I want to respond from, part of me is so proud and incredibly grateful. So, it really is about the families. And Father Jerred and I agree to this, and the congregations are living into this. This is not about our family, their family, these are these families, these human beings that are here in our community. And so not only have members and friends of First Religious Society really stepped up. I mean, whether it's going to the dump, donating items, driving to the grocery store, tutoring ESL, and collaborating so wonderfully, which I think you'll probably hear more about in some of the other questions, but within the city and with others who have come together in doing that. And so, and the community as a whole, I think in answer to your question about what has surprised me, it has been the incredible to-a-person outpouring and staying power of this in the whole city. Whether it's someone saying, I'll donate watch bands, you need a haircut for one of your, teens, perfect, we'll donate that. Every place we go, the libraries, the schools, every organization, every place responds. The Youth Service Bureau, the Y, I could go on and says, we've been wondering and thinking, how can we participate in this? Like, our community as a whole is showing up. Anyway, I have strong feelings of excitement, gratitude, hope, and love.
It is hopeful, isn't it? To hear how engaged people have been. Father Jerred, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Absolutely. No, I mean, I would say everything that Reverend Rebecca is saying. It has been overwhelming and surprising. I mean, I think everything about it has been surprising because I had no idea what to expect, so there were no real expectations, like concrete expectations, and so everything in some level has been surprising. And I knew that the community would step up. Obviously, at St. Paul's and, when we started this, and then at FRS, but also the wider community. Like, I knew that would happen. And I remembered even, some early discussions with like leadership at St. Paul's and people were saying, well, can we, support this or pull this off? And I would say, both financially, with increased expenses in the church and other things that was going to involve, and then also just with the, volunteer, power and everything else. And I would just said, well, look, I mean, I think we open this up to the community, and people are going to rally around it. We're going to have some help, right? But the amount that couldn't have expected, the sort of amount of support and just overwhelming enthusiasm. And I think what's crucial going forward is the steadfastness of that
Mm.
and the continual support and excitement. It's very easy with something like this for the hype to die down and people to sort of move on. But if we really want to, love our new neighbors, we're talking about long-term, support and long-term seeking after, helping these families and with through their own agency and abilities to achieve self-sufficiency and stability here. Like that is a long course, right?
Mhm.
That's not like
Yeah.
here's a sweater, which is
Right.
sweater's great, and that's real
right.
need. Like,
Right.
here's some bedding, or
Right.
absolute needs that or a check even, But so I mean, think sticking with it and realize that the community really signing on to this being a new part of who we are.
And I think allowing us to be changed, right, Father Jerred? It's like not only as individuals, but a community. In
Mhm.
doing so, in truly sustain, having that steadfastness, we will be changed
Mhm.
for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And necessarily so. I mean, it's not just,
Absolutely.
and that change, because that change doesn't even necessarily, some days are really hard with all of this. It's not that I like feel lovely all the time inside and overwhelmed with, joy and warmth, though that might be part of it, but living lives outwardly for other people, particularly for those in extreme, unparalleled sorts of need, necessarily absolutely makes us better human beings. We're becoming more generous, more open, more welcoming, more hospitable, kinder, generous humans. And that's a huge thing. And to realize not only the blessing that we can provide or what we have to offer, but what we're receiving as individuals and as a community, and how we're being transformed is really important. Not that we do it for that reason, but we learn through this that we take from one another and we give to one another, right? That we
Grow
live
together. Yeah,
that we live as our lives are gifts from and to one another, right? Both ways.
Yes.
And that's a really crucial aspect of this. And on the flip side, I really do believe that pushing this away or ignoring it or letting the hype die down or whatever would be a move in the opposite direction, right? We're never standing still. Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And I love what you said, Father Jerred, about, it being hard. It is hard. And it's showing for me, I can only speak for myself, like I am learning things about myself that are not all pleasant. I'm seeing my own sort of to really be in collaboration, not only with our two churches, but, you may hear more about how there's this working group and people are coming together. This is real and it's hard, right? It brings, for me, I'm like, oh, there's that tendency. Oh, there's that part of there's that. And it's profound.
Well, you both speak beautifully, I must say, about what you're describing. Love your neighbor is fundamental, but love isn't always easy. And neighbors aren't always easy to get along with. But it has to be, it says love your neighbor, doesn't say it's going to be easy. And being steadfast in love is part of loving, in spite of the challenges. But what I hear you both emphasizing also is, it can be hard. But it also deepens one. You learn about yourself, and it also deepens your faith, deepens your knowledge of yourself, and develops, you didn't use this word, but the word I would put is a kind of a wisdom and a grit. Wisdom and grit are important things in life. And I think they help us love our neighbors. So anyway, thank you both for those eloquent descriptions of how these experiences call for a steadfastness, and how they also call for ongoing growth, and an ongoing openness to learning what collaboration truly means.
Yes.
Because when it's ongoing, it shifts and evolves and becomes something that can be both harder but also more gratifying. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask you about the children, because, from what I've been following in the daily news, the descriptions of the families, they have a lot of kids. And the kids are widely varying ages, I think from 3 to 19. I may have that wrong, so correct me if I'm not remembering correctly. But I was just curious to find out about, in addition, kids are resilient and adaptive, but some things are particularly difficult for children, the things they've had to leave behind. So I just wanted to ask both of you, I know they're going to school now and getting English lessons. So how's school going? Just what are your observations of how things are going for the kids in these families?
You
Whoever
want to
would
go,
like
Father Jerred? You go first.
Yeah. Yeah. So the schools have been amazing. I should just say, first off, when we're talking about these kids and starting school and everything that it's, both sides of this are quite an adventure, and a difficult. There's been obviously on one end with the kids, immense amounts, indescribable amounts of trauma, and they are incredibly resilient. And I kind of hate that word normally because I think it's become this sort of like tagline for suck it up and be resilient. You can here's 10 exercises of wellness or whatever in your life or breathing patterns to do to become resilient, because you need to be, you can't be sort of weak, and you need to sort of step it up and be resilient. I fear that we kind of use it that, but to see it in these kids and these families, I think it's the genuine sort of use of the word, that the smiles on their faces and the joy in their life in spite of all that they're going through is remarkable and beautiful to see. And then on the school side, I mean, this kind of thing is unheard of, for the school system to deal with our three families, and with the West Newbury Congregationalist Church, who's also found housing in Newburyport. I think that's 31 kids within sort of 4 weeks or so, starting Afghan kids starting in our school system, at all 4 schools from the Bresnahan to the high school. And so it's a remarkable, sort of mountain of learning curve for the school as well. And, Lisa Marie Ippolito, the vice superintendent, has sort of been, leading the schools in this, and they've done such an incredible job hiring new English learning teachers and preparing the personnel through some training with the New American Association of Massachusetts, who's also been amazing in this whole time. And so lots of stuff going on there. The kids are overall really loving school. They're excited to go, and they come home with smiles on their face, which is wonderful. Some of the younger ones have had a trickier time, but like 2 of mine, when they started kindergarten, were, I had to sort of wait outside the door while they cried and slowly go away, or they start an hour one day, 2 hours next. So that kind of thing can be difficult for anyone, much less these kids who have a lot more going on. But they're just incredible, and they're excited to learn and to be in school. And they've talked about missing home and missing their family home, that's obviously incredibly difficult. But they're sort of really welcoming this new experience here with open arms and with excitement.
Yeah, it's the family staying in our parish hall. There are 9 children, and yes, Mary, 3. They're twins who are 3 to 19 is the eldest child. And when you were talking, Father Jerred, it really reminds me of this right? A world of because yes, there's been a tremendous amount of trauma, and there is such joy, and the trauma is real, and there are results of that. And I think that I'm just loving to get to know each and every one of them. At first, I was like, how am I going to remember 9 kids, 9 names? And are you kidding? They're each beings that have their personalities and that are, feisty and shy and just like any other group of 9 kids, right? And we, one of the things that I've learned to really appreciate and love is that it's not all of their behavior is because they are refugees or from Afghanistan. Some of it is because they're 3 or they're 11 or right. We go to buy winter boots. Thank you, Huddle. And, the 16-year-old's like, no, I want sneakers. And I'm like, oh, that's a 16-year-old. Kind of what you were saying, Father Jerred, about your kids in kindergarten, right? I see my kids who are now in their 20s in the ages. And anyway, it's a lot of it's the whole thing. Yeah,
some developmental impulses are universal.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Words. And it underscores the common humanity.
Yes.
So thank you both for that. And I'm glad to hear. I mean, I understand the trauma and the challenges, but it's nice to hear that there are about the joy as well. So thank you for that. along the lines of the theme of steadfastness, I'm curious to find out, after, basic shelter and food and getting the education for the children are taken care of, what do each of you see as the major challenges that lie ahead for these families that will also require the community to be steadfast in helping them navigate those next stage challenges?
Yeah. I think the biggest, there are several. Obviously, English learning is huge for their stability long term. They have English classes at both churches 5 days a week for all different age groups, and amazing sort of organization, really, of 40 or so volunteer English teachers, ESL teachers. It's amazing. And so that's a huge thing. Work, employment is also a huge thing, which goes hand in hand in some ways with the English learning, right? There has to be some sort of proficiency to be able to get on with that. And the absolute biggest need, I think, particularly for families this size is permanent housing, and something that we're really trying to focus on now. We can't house them temporarily by law forever, in our churches. Like, we have to move them on. And initially, at least in my own self and a few, like the resettlement agency and the few others I was talking to early on, we were thinking that maybe moving on to some place like Lowell or Lynn with a larger Afghan population that they could be around something would make the most sense. Now that we have about 40 here, and that's a community in itself.
It is.
Yes,
it is.
And being able to remain in the community where they're settling in, where the kids are in school, where they're beginning to play, youth soccer coming up in the spring, where they're really settling in, they're making friends, and things are happening. It would be yet more trauma to pull them out of that and land them somewhere else. And so trying to find ways to make that work here. But families of 9, 10, and 11, obviously, that's difficult, and it's going to take time.
Challenging.
And it's impossible. It's on the face of it. It's that kind of housing doesn't exist here, right?
Yeah.
You can't walk into a real estate agency and say, "Oh, I take that one, looks perfect," right? It just doesn't exist, right? And so, but with creativity and determination and enough sort of communal effort from various different aspects of this, and people we're in discussion with, and public and private and all kinds of other things, we can make something happen, for these families. If you want to. Like, anything is possible if you actually want to do it. And so that's what we're going for. One of the biggest things of that is fundraising, and that we need trying to raise as many funds as possible for their long-term, sort of settlement. And then the other thing, it's just whether it's, public buildings and spaces converted into something, whether it's things on the private market, whatever it is with landlords that are able to work, with this situation. This is the biggest, most important thing.
I completely agree. And, the will is there. We're, as Father Jerred said, we're gathering people now who are working on this. And we really need to see and believe and be open to how this can happen, right? And that it is possible. It is possible. Anything is possible. And yes, fundraising is going to be a big component of that. It's another wonderful way we're collaborating is that people can donate through either church. I know it's on our website and also on St. Paul's, and the funds are going to support the families. This is not like, St. Paul's is doing their fundraising and can they raise more for their families, and FRS is, we are meeting the needs and the long-term, independence of these families as a community for all of them. So,
Well, you anticipate the next question that I wanted to ask you, which is what form can contributions, donations, what form does helping out take for people in the community who want to give, want to help, want to welcome somehow? What can people do? Donating is obviously, fundamental. And I take from what you're saying that part of what's required is a tenacity of imagination and hope and faith. That just, we don't know how, we're working on it, but if you're tenacious in your imagination and your faith, things have a way of manifesting. If you just keep at steadfastness, once again,
there we
our
are.
theme for the day.
That's right.
But I know people want to know what they can do. So say a little bit more, your websites for both churches,
Yeah.
I think are portals to donation, but
They
what else
can-
can people do?
Well, I think I'm thinking of a few things, and this concept of time, talent, and treasure. So certainly, financial contributions are really important and helpful, both now and as we move forward. When there's a sign up genius that the churches that we're using, where if there are particular needs like umbrellas or flashlights for this last storm, that goes out, or sometimes it's on certain Facebook pages, and they're immediately met. Services, whether they're plumbers who have been donating their time, and companies donating, showers, so that there can be showers built in both churches, and that's happening. As I said before, haircuts and that kind of thing. And I guess I want to say two other things that may not be as obvious, or that are sort of a different response and equally important. One is it's personal education. Right? It's like, as being a part of this community, learning about your own selves, your own biases, your own unconscious bias, the Afghan culture, where these families have come from, so that we are not simply saying, become like us, but we are saying, help us know who you are, so that we can become the we that is all of us, that's informed by everyone. So self, education and really that. And the other is to continue to support the churches and the organizations that, as we are turning so much of our time toward this need, all the rest is still happening. So for those of you who are supporting us in other ways, so we can do this, thank you. Because, the churches haven't sort of stopped offering memorial services and pastoral care and Sunday worship services. And, anyway, I get emotional again in gratitude, but I think that's another way, is that, to just support the well-being and health of all the organizations involved that are, the schools are still teaching all of our other students, the youth service is still offering their services. So, yeah.
It's all an interdependent kind of network of humanity.
Right.
And so giving in one place benefits people in places in every way. And so there's a balance and a harmony, hopefully we all participate in. Father Jerred, was there anything that you wanted to say about how people?
No, absolutely. Yeah, echoing all of that is so important. And I do think that people, a couple of things. So one thing is that people sometimes are really keen to volunteer in particular ways, in the ways that they want to, right? Which is great. Don't, and it's like, just say, people, don't be discouraged. Maybe if that's not possible, like if you come now and say, I'd like to teach on Tuesday afternoons English, I have experience, at 4 p.m. or something. Well, there's already, it might not be right now, maybe in the future, or maybe some other point. So be patient, those kinds of openings. Or I'd like to give, I have a bunch of clothing that I'd like to give, or actually right now we have enough. So, but there are, one of the things that we really do need is more funds. And so as people are able to give to the families. And then the other things about general support that Reverend Rebecca was saying. And then also, I think there's a larger picture here as well of there are even nationwide and certainly community-wide issues, like, for instance, these the Afghan evacuees who have arrived here and are settling have what's called humanitarian parolee status. It's their legal status in the country, which is not permanent. It was a way to get them here quicker, because official refugee status, they are refugees by any definition of the word, of course, right? They didn't come here by choice,
Right. They
were forced out of their homes and brought here for their safety because of oppression and violence that they were facing. So it got him here faster, because it can be a few years of a process for that refugee status to take place, right? But what that means now is that there's no clear path to citizenship, and there's no permanence even for the benefits and things they're receiving. So they'll last for a number of months, and as of the law stands now, to my understanding, would just go away. There is a bill on, with nationally with the federal government to move them into a permanent status and towards a clear path to citizenship. That needs to pass. there, so we can put pressure on,
Mhm.
or let our voice be heard to those in positions of authority for that.
Mhm.
Also locally, our city and our new mayor has been incredibly supportive, and it's 100% on board. And so just supporting the city in that too, and finding ways in which they can, and encouragement says, hey, we do want them here. Let's do what we can, right?
Mhm.
Not in a way that's like, you better do this, right? Because again, they're 100% on board already and so supportive and wonderful, amazing. And it's, has been a part of this. And so, but just encouragement. So yes, let's do this, and so that kind of conversation needs to be happening as well. And then the cultural awareness and growth, personal growth of ourselves that Reverend Rebecca talked about is really important also. That if we're doing this right and do this well and we succeed in helping these families settle here, Newburyport's becoming new in a lot of ways, right?
Yes.
This is a new aspect of our life together.
Yes.
And we need to know what that means and what that looks
Right.
like, and how we can welcome and support them and help them to thrive and flourish here, just like I'm able to thrive and flourish here as, cis straight white American man, or whatever, like, or whoever else, like, it needs to be a community in which Afghan people can flourish as well.
Yeah.
And there's some
Yes.
good resources on IINE's website, the International Institute's website, for cultural orientation, other things you can find, online. And we've actually talked with some people here with our sort of working group made up of people throughout the city doing amazing things to support, and with the Human Rights Commission have had a discussion as well about perhaps putting together some cultural resources that in a centralized place where people can know and learn. And maybe the hub can be a part of, disseminating some of that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We'd love to.
Yes.
So hopefully that's coming down the road too, just to
Yeah.
help people say, okay, what does this mean for us,
Yeah.
as a community, and how can we, be the most open, welcoming community we can be.
Well, from what both of you are saying, there is an abundance of ways that people can participate, benefit from, give to. There's just, it's endless. And a lot of when you were talking, Father Jerred, I was thinking about, this is the American idea manifest. The idea that you can come here under a variety of different circumstances and become part of a community and be enriched by the diversity of people around you. And that really is what, in my mind, that's what it means to be an American, because we're an extraordinarily diverse country, and that's our richness. We're a nation of immigrants and nothing but, and that's our richness. That's our true wealth. Our wealth is our humanity. And if we love our neighbors, then we are enriching our humanity with a spiritual depth that creates a more meaningful life. And I think that's part of, my hunch would be, that's part of why people have been so welcoming of the opportunity to give, because it enriches us. It's a noble endeavor. And who doesn't feel better after engaging in a noble endeavor? Everyone does. So, and I just want to repeat here, the part of the way that you can support is to appreciate what others are doing, including, locally, but also nationally. You can reach out to your congresspeople and senators and ask them to support the pending legislation that would ease the path toward citizenship for the Afghan refugees. So one final question for you both, and you may feel that you've already answered it because you've been addressing the impact that this experience has had on both of you. But just in case there's anything else that our conversation has brought to the surface of your awareness, I just wanted to ask how each of you have been impacted by the role that you've taken as helpers to these families and your communities in ways that you may have expected and in ways that may have been surprising to you. Anything else that occurs to you as I frame the question that way? Or maybe not. Maybe you've said
I think
it
we're
all.
both waiting for the giving each other the invitation to go first.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I said earlier too, is like what ways you may have expected or surprised me about the change. I think everything has been surprised, right? Because there's no expectation I was able to have. That deep human connection and developing friendships, as well, for me has been both with the families and like the friendships and connection developing with them, and then just getting to know them has changed me, forever. And but also in the community, I only arrived summer of 2020 here and tried to throw myself in as much as I could into the wider community of Newburyport and things. And this has really done that in a big way and in a new way. And I've gotten to know so many incredible people doing remarkable things. I've gotten to know Reverend Rebecca a lot more, obviously, but so many too. This working group we have made up of people who in their careers, like they work with refugee resettlement. It's like what they do to, people looking after mental and physical health and well-being, to educators and, English teachers and, everything that it's just provided me a new way into the community, which is has been really, really amazing. And then, just again, surprised by the overwhelming support of the community. And that has given me hope for this place of Newburyport. I think I came from a city that had 170 countries represented and I lived there for over a decade, and it was home. And coming here with a very different sort of, percentage of diversity, let's just say, or hasn't been easy for me and my family. And there's always I've noticed here a real sort of air of wanting that diversity to come, of wanting to be inclusive and open community, but it hasn't really been tested, And I think at this point this is some sort of accountability has been put up. A mirror has been put up to people. Okay, we say as a community, this is what we want, and this is who we want to be. Now here it is. Like what's going to happen? And I think so far I've been, overwhelmingly pleasantly surprised at, the way that our community has rallied around this and sort of stood ground on what it says it wants to be, and begun to live that out.
Well, wonderful and well put. Thank you so much for that. And I would add also that you arrived in the midst of the pandemic, which is certainly not an easy way to start in a new parish. So anyway, thank you for that, Reverend Jerred. How about you, Reverend Rebecca?
Well, it's interesting. So first of all, I feel a little bit odd answering such a personal, this isn't about me. And yet, since you asked, Mary, I would say that very similar to what Father Jerred said, I moved here 4.5 years ago. And every week and day and year has made it a deeper connection, but this has made this place my home.
Yeah.
So, that's what I would say.
I'm really glad to hear that. Because I think Newburyport is way better off with both of you and the work you do, and your spirits just shine. And thank you so much for coming on the show this morning. It's been an honor to talk to you. And I just thank you. For the work you're doing and the leadership that you are showing in our community. I'm really appreciative of it, and I know that the community is really appreciative of it. And so thank you so much for taking time to come on the morning show and share your wisdom and your eloquence and your learnings with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you everyone out there who's helping make this possible. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So, all right. Well, that's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for watching or listening to the morning show. You can join us next Thursday at 9 on Channel 9 for next week's morning show. If you missed any part of today's show, it'll be available for viewing on Port Media's YouTube channel playlist for the morning show at ncmhub.org. Just click on the YouTube icon in the right-hand corner, then playlist, and scroll down. Each show will also air on WJOP FM 96.3 on Friday at 8 a.m. and again the following Tuesday at 4 p.m. and Wednesday at 3 p.m. and will be available as a podcast on the SoundCloud. Go to ncmhub.org and click on the cloud icon in the upper right-hand corner. Thank you, everybody. Farewell. Bye, Reverend Rebecca. Bye, Father Jerred.
Bye.
Bye, Mary.
Wonderful
Take
to
good
see
care.
you.
Bye, Father Jerred. See you soon.
Yeah, see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.